Do you find yourself struggling over and over again with writing lyrics? Whether you get stuck in the middle and you don't know how to finish, or you constantly feel like your lyrics are just never measuring up to your music. Well, I'm here to let you know that there's a simple trick to make your lyric writing easier and more fun every time. And that's what I'm going to share with you in today's video. Hi, I'm Brian from Unmute Your Muse TV, where we teach 5-minute masterclasses for songwriters. We use the Gold Song Solution to help you write songs that people will love, buy, and tell their friends about. In my early days as a songwriter, whenever a great idea for a song came to me, I would grab a piece of paper and just write down whatever came to mind. And then as the song started to come together, I'd figure out how many lines I needed for any given section, or sometimes I'd need to add a little bit of material, sometimes I'd need to take some away. Sometimes I'd wait until way after the fact to go through and try and impose some sort of rhyme scheme. Has your process ever looked anything like that? What I soon came to figure out is that this results in a somewhat scattershot finished product. My verses didn't necessarily support the chorus, nor was there a natural progression from one verse to the next. I usually had a theme that held the whole song together, but sometimes the song would just kind of approach that theme from a number of different perspectives, leaving the listener confused, or worse, disengaged. For example, in one of my first bands, I wrote a song called Blacklight, and the gist of the song was that sometimes things look like a good idea at first glance, but in the end, they might not really be that good for you. But throughout the course of the song, I referenced the idea of a blacklight as darkness, a flame, shadows, a metaphor for being uncomfortable, a knife, and death. Now, I mean, they all sort of fit together, but if I had any hopes of listeners having gotten my original message, I was sorely deluded. It was scattered, cluttered, disorganized. But I've learned some things since then. Imposing some organization on your lyrics doesn't mean that you're limiting your creativity. If anything, it's the opposite. It forces you to be more creative. And a little forethought can save you a ton of time. Having a clear central theme that is supported by the rest of your lyrics is infinitely more appealing for most of your listeners. That way they can focus on what you're actually trying to say. It allows them to engage more deeply with the topic and bring their own experiences to bear, rather than spending all of their energy trying to figure out what you're really trying to say. Furthermore, if there's no real lyrical development, people get bored. If the lyric doesn't develop, it's kind of like you're just saying the same thing over and over again. So what do we do about it? Well, here's my big tip for you today. Make a plan, an outline for your lyrics early in the songwriting process. I often do it after the theme has been decided, or sometimes when the only thing that I have is a title. I usually make a plan before I actually write any of the lyrics. And this makes writing faster and easier. It's kind of like filling in the blanks. For example, I might say, well, this is the section of the song where I want to convey that the character is feeling guilty about their actions. And then later, this part of the song is where he sees that his actions, he sees them in a greater context and the circumstances in which they took place. And then maybe here at the bridge is where he finally feels a sense of absolution. Now, another benefit of having a plan is that it also makes sure that each section doesn't get away from you. If you sketch out an outline of the different sections of the song before you start writing the lyrics, then you can make sure that the verses in the bridge actually support the chorus, that the second verse reinterprets the chorus in a new way, shedding some new light on it that the first verse didn't do. And it allows you to have a clear vision of how you're going to get your listeners from point A to point B during the song. Now, there are a wide variety of ways to organize your lyrics. And there are no rules. In the end, you really just have to go with what works for you. Let me share 3 resources with you that I found helpful in the past for when I was trying to learn how to structure my lyrics a little better. First is Pattison's idea of 3 boxes. Now, Pat Pattison is a lyric teacher from Berkeley, and you can find a bunch of videos online, some of which are free, and he's got a wide variety of books that are available that teach this concept of lyrical development. You have an idea, expand it a little bit, expand it a little bit. It's a very simplified version, but I highly encourage you to check out his materials. Another resource that's becoming more popular is the idea of song mapping, and that can be a little more detailed than just the boxes, and there are a whole bunch of different kinds of song maps that you can make, but the idea is to have a plan ahead of time so that you can have your lyrics take a listener from point A to point B in some sort of organized way. And a really good book that just came out not too long ago for this is called Song Maps by Simon Hawkins. Check it out. Now, another concept that might be worth spending a little bit of time researching is the idea of narrative arcs. Now, this is a literary theory idea that helps explain how fiction works. And the idea is that a story needs to move through certain phases in order to engage your audience emotionally in the best way possible. And it usually has a couple of different phases. There are a couple of different ways I've seen this written down online. But sometimes the phases are like, you have an exposition, you have an idea, you introduce your idea, and then there's rising action, some kind of tension that happens. There's a climax, and then things kind of fall down and calm down a little bit, and then there's some kind of resolution that brings it all together at the end. Now, all of this is not to say that you need to use one of these resources or that every song you ever write has to follow one of these patterns, but they are resources just to give you ideas to help you structure your lyrics in a better way that's going to make the songwriting process easier for you and the listening process easier for your audience. But what I'd like you to do right now is to share in the comments below if you've used any of these strategies before and how it's worked out for you. Or if you've never tried planning out your lyrics ahead of time, why don't you leave a comment below too and tell us how that's worked out for you.